Hello, my name's Anuki and welcome to Ironcast, and we've got a Men of War 2 replay to watch. This is just from the alpha test, and stay with me, it's actually pretty fun, though it does have its flaws. If you're looking for a team-based RTS, then this is one to check out, and I'll tell you some amazing good things, I guess, to start off with. Now, we'll let this match run in the background. This is a 5v5 on farmlands. The goal is to claim as much territory as possible. Each of the commanders has a role, which we can see at the top of the screen. Blue team has 3 infantry, 1 artillery, and 1 tank. Red team has 2 infantry, 2 artillery, and 1 tank commander. And I'll explain more about these roles later. But you know, the first amazing thing about Men of War 2, and I just can't understand why so many other RTS games don't have it, look at this map! It's got a grid system! And yes, we do have planes here, but that grid system on a map, I think all RTS games should really have it. I mean, it's such a strategical, tactical vibe, being able to say a target's in D2 or you need help in E6. It baffles me that Company of Heroes doesn't have it. And it's just a small thing, but that's just it. It's a small thing. It's literally just some lines and letters from the alphabet and numbers from the number alphabet. So anyway, the next good thing is the roles. I've mentioned infantry, artillery, and tank. There's also 3 factions. Now, in this test, Germans can fight alongside the US and Soviets. I'd personally like to see faction restrictions for teams. And in the future, it probably will be an option. It was an option in custom games at least. But coming back to the roles, the 3 primary roles, infantry, tank, artillery, but then there's more specialized roles, and I really like the look of some of them. The 3 primary roles are just quite generic. We can refer to these as regiments or divisions. Take the US Tank Division, for example. You have 3 phases during a match, and they unlock over time. We can see them on the right-hand side, listed 1, 2, and 3. In Phase 1, you get light tanks. In Phase 2, you get medium tanks. And in Phase 3, you get heavy tanks. However, there's also the US Medium Tank Division. And what this does is it allows you to field a medium tank in that first phase. I think it's just an early version of a Sherman. And you then get access to some better medium tanks in general, and in Phase 3, no heavy tanks for you. You are still limited to medium tanks, so there's an interesting trade-off there. Now, I'm more of an infantry-style player, and infantry has a very difficult time as they come across tanks and artillery hitting them from outside of their range, but the vision they provide is of utmost importance, and well, everyone can call in airstrikes, it seems, but infantry always seems to get access to some kind of aircraft at Phase 1, 2, and 3, and different types. You've got strafing runs, rocket strafes, and bombing runs, big bomb drops. We might see them all this game. You can see the trench being dug out there, or has already been dug out with the infantry positions in there, and already calling in a strike down on here. Got some kind of Panzer I here to capitalize off that strike. Everyone has been blown up, mushed up, squished up, something of the sort, all for this capture flag. And there's an AT rifle somewhere around here. Now, yes, the vehicles do sort of move a little bit weirder, especially if you're used to Assault Squad 2. It's something I feel is a valid complaint. I'd like to see a little bit more realistic vehicular movement, and the damage system is a little bit confusing for me. I don't think I understand it fully yet. Red doesn't necessarily mean destroyed. I think red does mean it can be repaired, but then there's... Again, I'm not really fully understanding it. We've got massive bombardments from small-time mortars here. Anyway, that's all I was saying about infantry, or I think I was going to say. So I am more of an infantry-style player. The basic infantry regiment will give you access to like sort of recruits in the early phase, and then in mid-phase you'll have more veteran infantry, and then in the last one you'll get like really heavy infantry, elite soldiers that come in like full package squads full of various types of equipment. But they also get access to scouts, which are good at recon, and artillery spotters, and these increase the accuracy of nearby or rather artillery that's firing within the artillery spotter's range. Yeah, that makes sense. Which encourages nice bits of teamwork between artillery and infantry players. Scouts are vital for providing information, and there is an actual stealth mechanic in this game which makes sneaking not just possible, but there's a gameplay feel to it as you see the enemy's vision with stealth-based units, so you can try and crawl and navigate and avoid the enemy's vision, which is on display for that unit. Now, I want to get access to the Recon Division, which wasn't available during the stress test, but I really like the idea of intelligence gathering and sneaking behind enemy lines to try and assist your artillery to find good targets or make your tanks get better positions, or your infantry player. If you're playing at a 5v5, you might not be the only infantry player, and you can help guide where infantry should coordinate their combined efforts with other players. It's definitely got an interesting teamwork aspect that I've really seen lacking in the RTS world. All in all, I think 3v3 and 5v5s will be interesting in a proper competitive teamwork environment. I hope to see a range of different mixtures of divisions. I certainly would love to cover such a thing, so if you're interested in Men of War 2, come along to the discord.me/Ironcast and get the hype ready. There's also engineer divisions. You can see at the bottom of the screen there are some buttons for building sandbags, barbed wire, tank traps, mines, a bunker, and of course the trenches. The trench system is pretty good, as we've somewhat seen a little bit of. We'll probably see some more. Got some artillery in the fog of war. Wow, just getting absolutely plastered in anti-tank or artillery. Now with the engineer division, the way that engineers and also medics work in this game is you don't spawn them out as infantry like you would usually do. Instead, what you do is you just click on the buttons at the bottom of the screen. You say, hey, I want some sandbags here. Engineers will then spawn, so long as you have engineers in your company, and they will then build the sandbags, and then they will run away from the battlefield having done their job. So they don't take up any command points. Command points are essentially how many units that you can field, but if you have 10 engineers or 30 engineers, then all your engineers can run out, deploy whatever sandbags, tank traps, bunkers, mines that you want to do, dig trenches, and then they'll just run off field, and it doesn't take up CP. Medics are kind of the same thing as well. Now, oh, nice bombing run. I gotta say, explosions and the way the aircraft work in this game, it looks beautiful. And if anyone's been doing Company of Heroes 3 recently, you can see the planes are just wacky. Totally wacky. Like, it's refreshing to see the planes kind of working a bit more like planes in this. And especially when they get shot down, which they frequently goddamn do. So medics, the way that they work is you see some downed soldiers. So long as you have medics in your company, you can just right-click on a downed soldier, as long as they're still breathing, and a medic will spawn just like an engineer will. They will grab the soldier and then they'll take them away. And so long as they make it off the battlefield, you can then spawn that soldier again from your reserves. You can also help recover allied soldiers, but that means they'll be able to spawn that soldier again. It doesn't convert to being in your company. So having medics, you can help your allies, but you might not necessarily have medics in your company. There's a certain amount of different unit types that each regiment can have. They get access to a lot, but then you can only field a small portion of that, and it's really down to you to kind of customize. And these aircraft, by the way, that we're seeing, they're also technically units. You call them in just like abilities. Now, how is that half-track still driving? Is it fully stopped now? It's definitely gone now. Fire! Yes, the text is very helpful. So we got a whirlwind up on this hill. Anti-air is quite important against all these planes, obviously, and there are anti-air divisions that you have access to. Anti-air obviously quite important for protecting artillery pieces. It doesn't just stop like strafing runs, but you can get paratroopers as well, which can infiltrate the back lines and do a lot of damage. But if they try and paradrop some troops behind enemy lines and you have anti-air and the whole plane is shot down, you lose that whole squad. These planes are actually units. If they get shot down, then you can't call them in again. But for example, in phase 1, you could have a recon plane. You could have up to 3 recon planes. If one gets shot down, then you only have 2 recon planes. But then if you do a reconnaissance run, but the plane doesn't get shot down, it simply just goes on cooldown for 60 seconds. That's a bloody smear. Now, I don't know this for sure, but maybe there's kind of like an airborne division. Surely there is. Where you can get access to heftier planes earlier on. Now, it is possible to have one plane in each phase, or rather one type of plane. So you can have a recon plane in phase 1, a rocket strafe one in phase 2. You could have another rocket strafe one in phase 3 rather than just like a big bomb droppy one. But it also means that you can call in 3 planes at one time for like really massive strafing runs or bombing runs, potentially. No idea what the Shukar was thinking, but it's out of action now. Driver dead, gunner dead. Pretty normal for things to just die all too easily in the whole of the Men of War series. Big infantry push on the right-hand side with a rocket strafe to help them. This building has been utterly decimated. And I think, interestingly enough, there's kind of like a breach mechanic. I think I've sent infantry inside of buildings, which infantry inside of buildings can fortify the building. It seems to like place some sandbags on the outside as an indicator, which I think just makes them kind of more resistant to attacks of all kind. But I'm fairly certain I've sent infantry into a building where enemy infantry is, and my infantry will go and melee them or shoot them. It's like they'll run inside and they'll try and kill them at least. Wow, big infantry pushing in through the middle, carving a chunk of the map out and giving it to the blue team. So I mentioned this game has its flaws. I think we can agree that vehicles are a bit too nippy looking in places. Acceleration and deceleration is a bit odd. I think we'd all favor a bit more realism or Assault Squad 2 kind of controls. The planes are out in force tonight. Oh, it looks so devastating. But infantry was able to survive somehow in it. Not for long, though. Oh, double planes getting blown up there. Very nice looking. Again, I'm so eager to see what this game looks like in the hands of pros. So yeah, the game still has direct control. I found it to be kind of awkward. There's third-person view, but 95% of the time you are just looking at the terrain. Throwing grenades on infantry is not as intuitive as it really should be. The maps... Well, grenades away. Nice timing, speaking of grenades. Here comes more planes. This has been rocket-runned so much. You'd think some infantry would have made it across by now, but I guess because of that whirlwind, it's probably very difficult to do so. I think it's also caused the majority of these planes to be destroyed. Ooh, rockets! Couldn't get a clean shot on it, and the whirlwind spotted it. So the other thing, I think, is that the maps are way too big. If anything, I think this is the biggest problem. Are those paratroopers? It sure looks like it. Very excellent turning there from the pilot. Still not as wacky as Company of Heroes 3, though. So the maps being too big sort of makes it difficult for, you know, in this 5v5, for example, you're kind of asking players to spread out evenly across the map, but I don't think that's really the intended way to play What the hell is going on here? Say hello to a Panther on the field and a big airstrike coming in hot. Rocket run, rocket run. Triple rocket run. I think that's my planes, by the way. Yes, I am featured in this map, and I'm just kind of doing wacky things. But because the map is so wide, keep having to return to my points, it doesn't mean that you can have like infantry in the front and then the tank behind that and then the artillery behind that. Sometimes what tends to happen is all the players are just on one side of the map, ignoring and neglecting the other, or you end up with like the 5 1v1s, and because people are beautiful trenches, because people are sort of on both sides randomly spawning on whatever sort of lane they think they're at, you end up with a situation where an artillery player is fighting a tank player, or the worst case scenario is an infantry player fighting a tank player, because the infantry player just typically gets pretty destroyed depending on what the terrain is like. But you know what? None of these things truly really mattered. Not for a team-based RTS. This was truly the most relaxing RTS experience I've ever had. I still got all of the intensity of an RTS, especially with those bombing runs, but none of the anxiety. That's the way that I would describe it. The whole reason MOBA games arose out of the RTS genre is because people found 1v1s too intense, and what people wanted was well, I suppose a simple way to put it is to hide behind 80% of their teammates and blame them. And there's just like no way to really confirm, you know, whose fault it was. You just kind of move on to the next game. But hang on a minute, Anuki. RTS games also have team-based modes. You could play Company of Heroes 1, 2, and 3 as a 4v4, or Assault Squad 8v8, Age of Empires. Seven Kingdoms, if you know that game, then you're awesome. Yes, you can, but the critical difference is none of those games have roles. In a MOBA game, you have roles. And in Men of War 2, you have roles. In a standard RTS game, though, you are everything. Because, well, kind of, the only reason you have 3 allies on your team is because some sod on the enemy team also has 3 allies. This isn't creating teamwork. And in most cases, you just end up with like 4 1v1s rather than 1 4v4. In Men of War 2, the infantry wants to lead the charge and gain vision. The tanks and infantry rely on each other to advance and protect each other. Artillery has its job of taking out enemy artillery and placements or dug-in infantry. And you might decide as an artillery player to get more engineers into your company and focus on fortifying the ground for your allies and infantry to take. You might have a division that's focused around infantry support and help allied infantry with medics, freeing up a slot for your infantry-focused player to get more firepower. The point is, you focus on a very narrow scope in Men of War 2. You are a cog in a machine, not the whole machine itself, and then you have 3 other machines on your side. In Age of Empires and StarCraft, you have to do everything. You have to be good at building up your base. You have to micro your units to the fullest extent of what is humanly possible for you. And there's just everything that you would normally do in a 1v1, you would still do in a 2v2 all the way up to a 4v4. It's just now a team-based game. But, okay, maybe that's not a fair comparison. Compare it to Assault Squad 2. It's kind of similar still. You still have to focus on everything. You can't just skip to tanks unless it's a very casual 6v6 or 8v8. If you've played Assault Squad 2 and you've had one of those players on your team that only spawns artillery, you can see in most cases it's a total hindrance. And Men of War 2's interest lies within just taking a single component and really focusing on that task at hand. And this is exactly what I have wanted to do in an RTS for a long time. And it's exactly what I'm going to be doing when mod tools arrive for Company of Heroes 3. If you're interested in the idea of having role-based RTS combat, but not so keen on Men of War 2, then prepare for a thing to exist in Company of Heroes 3. Just, again, join the Discord and inquire. There's, I think, some details already on that. Now, there's still actually a lot more that I want to talk about, but we are rapidly approaching the 2,500 score limit, which means a victory has been acquired. Blue team rapidly approaching it, getting infantry into defensive positions on the left-hand side. A lot of territory for the red team to take. This trench has been destroyed. It can be rebuilt. Again, a very pretty looking trench. Those are the recon flares that squads seem to randomly fire intermittently just by themselves. Bazooka shot on the whirlwind. Nice turret popping explosion. So if you've enjoyed this video, do give it a like, subscribe, but more than anything, why don't you comment on what kind of things you might like to do in Men of War 2 if you're interested. Are you going to be like a tank player? What kind of tanks? Do you want to go with a super heavy tank? You want to maybe be the artillery player and try and coordinate with an infantry person? Have you got anyone to play with? Come along to the Discord again. Maybe we can group up and do some awesome things together. I definitely know that I want to cast some games. The game already has a replay system that is working, so we can totally get on that when it releases. I'm going to leave it as that, though. There's, I think, 3 more Men of War 2 videos I can upload. I will get them commented over. And truly, I hope you found this interesting. See you for the next video.